Welcome to Buzz and Bark. My name is Patricia, and today we're going to do Reiki. So I'm not going to do any channeling today, but every so often I do. But before I get started, remember to like, share, and comment. And I just want to give a brief story on snails. Okay, and this is not escargot. I'm a vegan. Well, kind of, because I do eat salmon, so that makes me not a vegan. However, I've been seeing a lot of snails. I'm needing to slow down, and I've been practicing mindfulness and learning about Buddhism. And as soon as I started doing that, I started seeing these snails like everywhere. And they're usually on the sidewalk, and I just move out of the way. And sometimes I don't know, I talk to things, so I talk to them. And sometimes I'll even stop and watch them for a while. And yesterday I saw, and I had never seen this before, but I guess this happens a lot. There was a snail that was crawling up a sliding door, like a glass sliding door, and I saw it from like the inside of the house, and I go like, what's that on the, because I had cleaned the windows recently, and so I was wondering what had landed on the window. And so I went to look at this snail, and it was so determined like to get to the top of this window, which is probably about 6 feet, a little over 6 feet. And then it was trying to get to the edge on top where it was going to cling. And I don't know how they get from this direction to like being upside down. I didn't see that part. But anyways, I thought that the snail was going to commit suicide or something. I just didn't understand like why. I've only seen them really on the ground or on plants and things, but I've never really seen them like climbing up a wall or a ledge or anything like that. And so I kind of made that joke. But then, not shortly after that, I started noticing that there was thunder and there was lightning. And I go, oh, okay. And I still didn't put the two things together. So then I looked up, I went online and I looked up why would snails climb up windows and get on ledges. And it said that they did it to get out of danger. So they would, to get off the ground if it's been hot, like they'll get away from heat, they get away from predators, which are birds, the robin being one of the main ones. And or they'll do it because of storms and things. And so there was a storm and there was some rain, and there was another snail that was just rolled over in the grass, and then there were two of them. One had climbed up onto this ledge and protected itself, and then when I woke up this morning it wasn't there anymore, so it must come down like after the storm. And what that had me thinking about is like this wisdom that we all have, that awareness, right? And you have to really move past your ego. You have to get into a place of presence in order to hear what it is you need to do to either protect yourself or whatever it is, like if you're looking for a food source or whatever it is. And back when humans were ancient, we didn't have grocery stores, right? We didn't have online shopping. We didn't have all these things. You had to go out in the wild, and you had to know what you could eat and what you couldn't eat. And you had to really rely on these primal instincts, and you had to rely on intuition and some other things. Well, the animals have never lost those abilities. And especially when you see things like, all these other worlds that people will see as gross. So, there's probably people who can't stand snails, mostly gardeners. And then there'll be like, the people don't like slugs and people who don't like all sorts of things, right? For me, it's sugar ants. They just drive me crazy. I try to get them to go outside and just leave me alone, but they just multiply and they never go away. But other than that, and they probably have something to teach me as well, and I'm just too stubborn to learn what it is. And so for people who want to get into animal communication and bonding with nature and all the rest of that, there's two things you need to do to get started. One of them is to keep your chakras, and we're going to do some chakra clearing here, is to keep your chakras clear and in balance. So you don't want too much energy to go in your chakras or not enough energy. You want it to be in balance. You want them to be activated. You want them to be working, especially if you're wanting to work with intuition. You really need to have the ones up above your head, and then especially the pineal gland, third eye, and then the throat, so you can communicate, right? And communication isn't just talking. Communication is also telepathy. And telepathy is what you use to communicate with animals and to communicate with nature. So you can use telepathy out loud. You could use it quietly, which is what most people do. They just kind of send thoughts. But it's more than sending thoughts. It's also sending feelings, and it's sending presence. And so the other one you need to do is you need to meditate. And I, for decades, resisted meditation. Like, I just didn't think I could do it. I had every excuse in the world. I'm too busy. I got this to do. I'd sit down and my mind would just go crazy, and I'd get up and I'd give up. And you have to have a lot of patience, and you start really small. So you might just start by following your breathing for 2 minutes, and that's it. And then maybe every 15 minutes you take a break and you just breathe for, you follow your breath for maybe a minute or two, or maybe 5 minutes, right? And then you just build up like over time. But if you try to do an hour at once, or 30 minutes or 15 minutes at once, you're probably going to drive yourself crazy unless you do a guided meditation, like, something that's recorded. And then it's better if it's just audio rather than video and audio, because if it's video and audio, then you're engaging too many of your senses, and it's going to be hard to go inner, right? Because when you meditate, you really want to go inside. You don't want to be using all your senses here in the outside, right? Because you want to follow the sensory in your own body. So you want to like tap into your own body. You want to go, okay, what's going on with my feet? What's going on with my legs? What's going on with my face, or your eyes, or whatever? And you tune into those things, and you pay attention. You become very present. And so one of the things that I learned, I didn't even know that I was learning presence and awareness when I was learning animal communication, because I just didn't put the two and two together. But part of the animal communication is you have to be present. You have to be listening. And the listening that you do with other creatures is deep listening. So it can't be shallow and superficial. I mean, for some things maybe you can. But if you're dealing with some really, really tough questions like, is my animal ready to transition into spirit? Or, I'm bringing an animal home from a shelter, or what do they need? Those are things where you really have to listen, because you don't want to get it wrong. And it's so possible to get it wrong, especially if it's a yes or no kind of thing. And, you got 50-50 either way. And if you don't really even trust your abilities, or if you're going through maybe some difficult times in your life and you're just an emotional mess, it's probably not a good time to even try to do those things, because you have to be able to be still. You have to be still. And you have to be able to separate your feelings, your sensations, your thoughts from that of the one you're communicating with. And it takes a lot of practice. I took some classes, and then I practiced on like 100 different animals. Some of them were on Facebook. Some of them were like animals of friends and colleagues, and just different people that came through referrals. And I didn't charge for any of those. So like my first 100, and the same with Reiki. When I was doing remote Reiki, the first remote Reikis, I didn't charge, because it's practice. And you're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, and you don't really want to charge somebody for, like if you're still learning, you don't really want to be charging. So you can, if you are somebody learning animal communication, you can even start practicing on shelter animals, but you don't have to go to the shelter to do it. You can just ask if you can go to the shelter page and look at the images of the animals that are there, and then ask them if they have any questions for the animals. And then you just write it, whatever comes down, you just write it all in a notebook. Or you can record it on like your phone or something like that, and then you just make a recording or an email or whatever, and then you send it to them. And then you will either get validation, or you'll get the thing where you can run into confusion, where they don't really know the history of the animal, so they can't really verify. Or they may have the wrong idea about the animal, and the animal is telling you the truth, but they don't believe it because they already have their assumptions that they've made about the animal. And also, a lot of animal communicators aren't taken too seriously. In fact, I don't even think animal communication is taken seriously by most people. And so that's if you want to go into animal communication. But I was mentioning the snail because there's a wisdom in all of nature, right? And we have that wisdom too. And even if you don't ever become an animal communicator, if you even just learn animal communication and maybe some mindfulness meditation, then those skills are going to serve you in your own personal life. So those are going to help you with your pets, if you have children, if you have a career, or you're an entrepreneur and you got to make decisions and you're not sure which way to go, and you want to trust your intuition. Well, those are really good skills actually that can be transferable to really any occupation or any endeavor in your life, because basically what you're doing is you're honing your intuition and you're learning telepathy. And telepathy can be used on humans too, right? Although you really want to have some sort of consent from people. You don't want to just send a bunch of messages to people telepathically, because that's an invasion of other people's space, and at least on the energy level, and actually on any level, it's an invasion of space. But if you have like consent and say, hey, you want to practice telepathy, then that's great. Or can you send me a message in my dreams, or things like that. You can do that with other people that you trust. But what will happen when you learn telepathy is you'll also be more in contact with, the spirit world, and you want to be careful with that as well. But once you have your spirit guides and you trust them, they will like warn you about things. So they'll say things like, I wouldn't go down that street if I were you. Don't take the highway. Why don't you take this other route? Or they'll tell you, you could stay home today. It'd be a good idea if you stayed home today. Like if you have to go to work or something, just call in sick, or, I'm not saying to do that all the time, but if you're getting a strong message to do that, because the people who were more likely to survive, say something like 9/11, were the people who stayed home, and not the people who went to work that day. So the person who is more likely to die in something like that are people who don't listen to their intuition. They're very pushy with themselves, and they're too loyal to others. Like, instead of having that you can have self-preservation. It doesn't make you selfish. It just means you're going to survive, right? So if you wake up, in a morning and you're just getting a strong feeling not to go to work, then don't go to work. Figure out how to not do that. And then you might find out later in the day that something really bad happened there. Like maybe it was a fire, or maybe you would have been on the road at that time and there's a bad car accident and you would have been part of that. Or, you don't know, like, so when you're working with telepathy and, spirit guides and all the rest of that, because communicating with spirit guides is a form of telepathy. So, you can call it your intuition, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But these are the things that we need to have going forward, because I'm sure you've looked around, you don't even have to watch the news. We're in pretty dangerous times, and I'm not trying to be negative here. And the people who are going to thrive and the people who are going to survive are the ones who tune into their intuition. They're the ones who are going to be balanced. They're the ones who are going to, straighten out that monkey mind. They're the ones who are going to take that little bit of effort, or maybe it's a lot of effort every day, and to build those skills, because it doesn't just happen overnight. And there are people who think they can just take one workshop and they're done, right? Well, I paid $300 for that workshop, I should be telepathic now. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. All of these things are like learning a musical instrument, right? Nobody becomes a virtuoso overnight. When you look at even the children virtuosos, you've got to look at how many hours they're practicing every day. And yes, they had raw talent, and some people may be more gifted in telepathy than others, but we can all do it. It's just a matter of clearing your mind space, because that's what you're working with. You're working with your third eye. You're working with your throat. You're working with your crown. You need to, and if you want to have compassion for others, then you've got to open your heart chakra. And if you need to protect yourself and set boundaries, well, then you're going to need to open up those first three chakras, which is the root, the sacral, and mostly the solar plexus. And, and also if you want to feel secure and safe in the world, then you got to, have your root chakra. So I'm going to get started here. I already called in the angels, and I've already asked them to clear the space so that we're in a safe space. And if you would like the Reiki, then don't cross your arms or legs. And if you don't want it, but you want your pets to have it, then you can cross your arms or your legs. Because, you could still get the Reiki if you have your arms and legs crossed, but it doesn't work as well. And then the other thing you need to remember is after any Reiki, whether it's remote or in person, you want to drink at least 1 glass of water. And if it's purified water, better, because what's going to happen is there's going to be this energy in your body that's it's trying to move out. And just like you detox the physical body with water, it also works energetically, because we're electrical. And so the water is also a conduit, and I can't get into physics. I'm not a physicist. I'm also not a medical practitioner. So if you have any medical, or your pets have any medical conditions, make sure that you go to a licensed medical professional. What I do is I offer energy healing to unblock energy centers in the body, which, can leave you feeling better. It doesn't cure or anything like that, but it definitely makes it easier for whatever else you're using in combination. So, sometimes Well, I mean, I've actually experienced miracles with Reiki myself, but I can't make any claims, and neither can any other Reiki practitioner. You just have to experience it for yourself. So I'm going to use this this necklace my friend bought me. It's actually a quantum necklace. It has like titanium beads inside of it, and this one is supposed to be for health and wellness. And anyways, it's a little bit bulky, but it does seem to help my energy levels, because I usually have really bad fatigue, and it does help with that. So we're going to start with the root chakra, and we're going to see if it's already unblocked or if it's blocked. Okay, it's a little bit sluggish, but it looks like it's open. So then we're going to do the second chakra, which is the sacral chakra. It's an orange color traditionally. It's doing pretty well. Solar plexus. And it's a little bit sluggish, but it's still open. Heart. Yep, heart's doing really well. So basically, if it doesn't, you see how it's going around in a circle? If it doesn't do that, it means it's blocked. I've already asked it that ahead of time. And then we're going to do the throat. That one's looking pretty good. Actually, everything's looking pretty good. Third eye. Crown. Feet. Yeah, it looks like all the chakras are pretty much unblocked. So I don't really need to do any of that for any of us. So that means that we're all doing our work, right? We're all doing our clearing. And anybody watching this, if yours aren't cleared, let's just set the intention that by the time this video finishes, when you're watching it, and for your pets as well, because I'm mainly looking at the animals' chakras. But when I send the remote Reiki to the animals, I'm sending it to all of us, because that's the way Reiki works. So anybody wanting do an intention right now. So the intention for this Reiki session is going to be strengthening intuition and strengthening a bond, a telepathic bond with all creatures. Now, it's not going to magically just make that happen, but it's definitely going to awaken those parts of you, and then you'll know the next step in the process. So there is work required. So I'm going to do the singing bowl. A little bit about this bowl. This is a therapeutic grade singing bowl, and they are pricey, and I believe this one is made out of, oh god, I think it might be made out of brass. I can't remember what it's made out of. But anyways, this has, and if you see my other videos, I'll mention it as well, it has hertz ranging from 100 hertz to 1,000 hertz, and 1,000 hertz is more up in the higher chakras, and then the 100 hertz is more in the first three chakras. And it's so the lower the tone, the more relaxing it is. It discharges your nervous system. The higher the tone, it charges your nervous system. So if you were to go to a sound healer, you want them to have therapeutic grade bowls, because these tones will go deep into your muscles, and it'll go deep into your bones and everything else. Some of the other singing bowls, especially the ones that I first got when I was first learning sound healing, they just really didn't do a whole lot. I thought they did because I didn't know any better. But once I started using this, I could feel the difference. I mean, this is just a huge difference. This bowl can clear a room. So I can go into a room, and the tension in the room, all I have to do is strike this bowl a few times, and that tension is completely gone. So I can't even imagine what it can do for the physical body. So a lot of your really high level, sound therapists even will have, the therapeutic bowls, and they do cost a lot more, but you don't need all the other ones unless you're going to do sound baths. And then if you're going to do sound baths, you don't actually need therapeutic bowls. You would just be using, regular singing bowls, and you just want to have tones that work really well together. And that could be healing as well too. That can also either charge or discharge the nervous system, but it's just done in a different way. So a sound bath is usually done for a group of people, or it can be done for one person or two people, or it could just be like a family doing it. But then with these bowls, you're usually like running it over the body, and usually you can start behind the head and then behind the feet, and then sort of run up and down, and sort of clearing. So they usually like clear energy out that they don't want, unwanted energy, and then they bring in new energy, with intention and all the rest of that. So I just thought I'd mention that. So I did not bring any crystals with me. I completely forgot, and I'm not even wearing any. So if you have a favorite crystal and it's near you, you might want to go get it. And if it's a necklace, then wear it as a necklace, or, bring whatever your favorite crystal is into the room. And you can intend that it, clears energy, unwanted energy of what you want. And I think our intention, again, was to be able to telepathically and, open those channels so that we can communicate with nature. So you might want to get like a brown stone or a red stone or a green stone or something that represents the earth. Or you could get a blue or a white to represent the sky and the air and communication. And you can also call on your guardian angels, you can call on your spirit guides, you can call on the guides for your animals, and whoever else you want to bring into the space. The space is being sealed and protected like *3. That's just the magic number. And, I'm just going to be using this as a surrogate. I do not have background music. I wish I did. So you might be hearing, unfortunately, airplanes in the background, and I ask you to rise above it if you can and if I can. Okay, so I'm going to start on the bottom. I'm going to start with the root chakra because I really feel like we need to be grounded. So if you're sitting, then on a chair, press your soles of your feet into the ground. If you're laying down, then press your back and your body into the bed or whatever surface you're on. And if you're sitting cross-legged, then just, your legs, just press them down into, and if you can, press your feet, the sides of your feet, onto the earth. So that's really important. And know that your animal needs to come and go freely. So you might want to leave a crack in the door or some way, unless you're in like a studio apartment and you don't really have a choice. The animal needs to come and go. They may come and go away from whatever device you're listening to this, because they receive Reiki in a different way. So if they're walking away, it doesn't mean they're not receiving the Reiki. It just means they want a more subtler form. And I did this thing where I've been listening to this woman, Carolyn Cousins, and she does the pendulum on the different maps and charts. And she said if you're a Reiki practitioner, you can ask to be up, attuned to higher levels. So I asked to be attuned to levels 7 and 8. And so this is the first time I'm going to do a Reiki remote with the attunement of 7 and 8. And I was only tuned to like level 3 before. So expect something powerful. Well, actually, don't expect anything. Just experience it. Okay, so here we go. Root chakra. I'm going to do each of them for a minute. And then I'm going to do the rest of the sound healing, and then I'm going to close out the video. So thank you for being here. I'm also bringing in the Bodhisattvas and the Buddha and Kuan Yin and white Tara and green Tara, which are from the Buddhist traditions. And you can bring in whoever you want for yourself. Okay, so I'm going to go to the second chakra. Just do it right here. Solar plexus. It's supposed to be a bird. Heart chakra. For this one, picture pink light in your heart area and also the heart areas of your pets. Throat chakra. Third eye. Well, I wouldn't, if this were an animal, I would not be putting my hand right here. Crown. Ears, nose. This is a surrogate, right? So I'm sending the Reiki through a stuffed animal to you, so I'm not just playing with my toys. Doing my tornado tool. Getting rid of unwanted thoughts. Okay, I'm going to do a sweep. So sweeping the energy, all the unwanted energy off the body and any excess Reiki off the body. And then I'm going to ground by doing some Reiki on the feet. See if you can, this is when you want to press your feet into the ground if you can. Okay, one more sweep. Of course, humans don't have tails, but animals do, some animals. I don't know if sugar ants do, but yeah, and this little creature here, this stuffed toy, or whatever you want to call it, it's a red panda, and it came from Madison, Wisconsin, so I named it Madison. Because I love the name Madison. It sounds like medicine. Okay, so I'm closing out that Reiki session. May the Reiki continue to flow where it's needed for highest and best. And I'm going to seal it with the Reiki symbols. I'm just going to say them in my mind. Okay. And now I'm just going to end with some sounds. So thank you for watching, subscribing, liking, sharing, and I will send you out on these beautiful Koshi Chimes. And have a wonderful week with you and your pet bonding. Bye for now.